Well, welcome back to another week's analysis behind the news. We're going to talk about the Snowden affair a little bit. As you know, I put out one of these videos a few weeks ago saying that we needed to let a few more chips be put on the table before we made up our mind whether Snowden was a hero or a villain. We still are not ready to come down on that one on either side, but some interesting things are beginning to develop. We caution everyone not to come down with a decision on whether Snowden's a patriot or a traitor until everything's in place, okay? One of the things that has come out, however, is the fact that, and this is an article that appeared in last week's New York Times, and says, Snowden's choice of lawyer comes with high profile and ties to the Kremlin. And it's Anatoly Kurenshian is his new attorney. And this man is very interesting. He started the Institute of Democracy and Cooperation in 2008. It's a strange mix of conservatives and individuals tied to the Kremlin. Many people call this organization a mouthpiece for Kremlin policy on an international scale. But there's something even more interesting in regards to this individual, because someone who has had a very good history over a period of time is Trevor Noah when it comes to talking about American politics, American figures, and their tie to communists and that sort of thing. Does a very good job. We don't know where he's been mistaken so far. That's not to say that what he says today is completely accurate, 100%. But based on his track record, you have to listen to the man and hear what he's saying about what's going on. And there's something very revealing that he brings out in his website last week. It's called New Zeal, by the way. It's in New Zealand. He's a New Zealander. A Kiwi, I guess they call him. At any rate, he says that NSA leaker Snowden to join KGB veterans group. And it appears as though Snowden has applied for membership in a veterans organization of intelligence officers out of the KGB. It's just like like the Americans might have the American Legion or something like that. But this is confined apparently to intelligence operatives out of the KGB. And he wants to join the veterans group. Rather strange. But one thing that he does say at the bottom is that, as discussed previously, and I've got to go back and look at this because I've only got this particular segment of his website. Anatoly Kurenshian is an FSB, that's the renamed KGB, FSB stooge, who supports every type of censorship Putin can think of. And so this is the man that Snowden has hired, asked to be, I don't know what the payment process is, to be his attorney. So we're finding more and more strange things in regard to this Snowden affair. Stay tuned. Again, we're not ready to come down on either side. Now, don't misunderstand me. We do not like what our own government is doing relative to surveillance. But Russia, if for no other reason, needed this Snowden affair to take the heat off of themselves. Because Russia was getting into a lot of hot water in Europe for being a hacker, the main hacker, actually, of various websites, governments, businesses in Western Europe and Central Europe. And so they want to deflect the image to the United States as being the big bad guy, and the Chinese as well, rather than themselves. And so we don't know what's going on here, but it's an event made in heaven for the Russian intelligence services to have Snowden. So yes, American intelligence should not be involved in doing what it's doing. It violates the Constitution and its Bill of Rights in what they're doing. But let's be cautious about, lauding Snowden for what he has done as a hero. It's helping build the case against these things. There is a move in Washington, D.C. that's growing to curtail the NSA and other intelligence agencies from wholesale carte blanche surveillance. Remains to be seen how that's going to turn out. But at any rate, these things can always be used by our enemies. So let's be careful about, standing up on a pedestal a guy like Snowden until we find out what his real motives were. I know what he said, but let's wait and see. At any rate, one of the things that's becoming disturbing is the fact that local and state governments are starting to push off their retirement and medical services to the government, the federal government. Here, for instance, in this morning's New York Times, it says Detroit looks to health law to ease costs. And what they're talking about in this article is the fact that they're moving the medical coverage from being on the Detroit's payroll, if you will, or budget, to the federal budget by going into the Obamacare area and having it taken care of by the federal government. And likewise, in the Chicago Tribune last week, it said Medicaid to expand in Illinois. So Illinois as well are pushing the individuals that are on their medical plan off onto Medicaid. And so what we see is city governments who are in trouble, like Detroit, state governments who are in trouble, like Illinois, taking people off the rolls of medical coverage that they pay for and putting it over on the federal government where everybody pays for it. Now, if you remember, we were told at the beginning that there were about 30 million people in the United States that didn't have medical coverage. And so they needed something like Obamacare. Well, now, if this persists, this sort of thing where the cities are pushing them off on Obamacare and Medicaid and the states doing likewise, it's going to add more millions to the Obamacare rolls, which means more billions in dollars will rise that the average taxpayer has to pay for. Because these people aren't going to pay for it. You and I, everybody, will pay for it, so to speak. So it's going to make Obamacare very expensive. There's a move in Washington, D.C. to defund Obamacare. Now, you and I, on the surface, would applaud something of that nature. We shouldn't have Obamacare to begin with. But if you take a look at what is happening and why I always bring out that particular passage in the Communist Manifesto in my writings, that they start with a problem and give us a solution that adds to the problem, to give us another solution that adds further to the problem, until finally they arrive at the point where they wanted to go, but all the while we were ignorant of those dots, so to speak. We didn't connect the dots from where they started to where they ended. And that's what's going on with Obamacare. They started with Social Security because of a problem. That created another problem, so they gave us Medicare and Medicaid. That created another problem. They gave us Obamacare. Now that's breaking down. Pretty soon there will be wholesale millions in the country, particularly government employees, in areas that are in trouble with their budgets. Millions of people pressuring Congress to do something. That something will be socialized medicine completely if they have their way. And that's what's going on. All of these little dots along the way are leading toward that. And it's a very dangerous situation. So keep your eyes on that. It doesn't bode well for the medical profession in this country, for medical coverage for the average citizen, and everything else. It's leading to a total breakdown if it continues on the path that it's going. Until next week, we'll see you then.